Right. Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever you happen to be. My name is Paul. I'm also called Knickknack. I run the YouTube channel that is at Mr. Cuddy 2977. You probably worked that out already if you found this video. And I also write the blog that is Knickknacks of Peculiar. I do TV reviews, I do daily teaser quizzes, and I talk about all kinds of stuff, but I also talk about movies that I've watched and want to share my opinion about, he says, speaking very carefully. At any rate, it's Sunday the 9th of February 2025. Friday, just gone, the 7th, saw me watching the science fiction masterpiece that is Blade Runner, and I thought you'd want to hear my thoughts on it, and maybe share yours in the comments if you get the chance. That's underneath this video. Blade Runner opens with a short textual opening telling us in white text on a black background that the year is an alternative 2019, some 40 years in the future at the time of the film was made, and that the Tyrell Corporation has made advanced robots called replicants, robots indistinguishable from humans, and that these robots aren't allowed on Earth. We are told that any that do get here aren't executed, they're retired. The scene shifts to a smoke-filled office where a Blade Runner, a replicant hunting police officer called Holden, played by Morgan Bull, is testing a new Tyrell employee called Leon, Brian James. He's testing Leon to see if Leon is human or not, only for it to end in Holden getting seriously injured as Leon shoots him to stop his imminent arrest. The scene changes again to show us retired Blade Runner Rick Deckard, Harrison Ford, waiting to order food at a rather grimy street restaurant, only to be cornered by Gaff, a local policeman, Edward James Olmos, who orders Deckard back to the local Nick to talk to his old boss, Captain Bryant. Bryant, Emmett Walsh, has found a number of replicants have recently illegally landed on Earth, that one of them has seriously injured Holden, and that he, Deckard, is needed because the remaining group of replicants need retiring. Now, what did I think about this version of Blade Runner? Cast, plot, set design, narration, Uncle Tom Cobley and all. Let's also ask, which version did I watch? Let's answer that last question first, shall we? Or try to. Over the years, a lot of films have had alternative...
1645.
Have had alternative cuts made or thought about. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I think, started all that back in 1980, when a special edition was issued 3 years after its original release, and then having a director's cut at some point in the late 90s, 1998, I think. Don't quote me, though. But that had a couple of special editions made. The recently released Breaking Glass, which I watched a few months ago, also has a UK cut and a US version. I called the UK version as I thought it was the more authentic and original telling of the story. Event Horizon, the classic sci-fi horror film, could have had a director's cut made or had extra footage survived. Star Wars, famously, the original film, rather than the whole damn franchise, has seen several different releases and remastering over the years, with newer versions replacing earlier ones. And at one point, I'm told the only way you could see something resembling the original cut was by buying a fan-made recreation that had been on eBay. Don't quote me on that either, but I think it's been taken down. At any rate, the Blu-ray version I got from Amazon included 5 different versions of the film. The original US theatrical release, the original international theatrical release, the original work print, or rough cut, the director's cut, which was a version made by an archivist and film restorer with minimal involvement from director Ridley Scott, and finally, the final cut, which is Ridley Scott's own director's cut and the one he prefers and advocates you buy. Broadly speaking, the theatrical releases have what's called the happy ending, where Deckard and Rachel, Sean Young, drive off into the sunset, and they have a voiceover from Deckard supplied by Harrison Ford. The final cut and director's cut don't. The word print, I couldn't tell you, I've never seen it. The version I caught last night was the international release, as that was the version I would have seen on VHS back in the late 80s. So, going into this version of Blade Runner, knowing there's other versions in the box set I'd got, including a director's cut I'd seen but not reviewed a few years ago now, I have to say I think I made broadly the right choice watching the international theatrical cut. It's a few seconds longer than the US one, and it's also one that for some is not a good thing because the voiceovers are an unwanted and unwelcome annoyance. Granted, I think they don't add anything to the film. Ridley Scott knows how to show you, not tell you. But Ford's performance of those voiceovers, that very flat, tired, absolutely bored, witless performance, is something I found added a lot of atmosphere to an already atmospheric paint. It added a coat of brown cigarette-stained varnish over the top of an already grungy building. It added atmosphere. Buildings are probably another thing as well. I don't quite know who designed the various cityscapes of this alternative Los Angeles. It's buried in the credits somewhere. I'm blowed if I could find it. But I think that the various sets, the locations, the mats, the buildings, the street level sets were all absolutely wonderful. They made this future Los Angeles look both used, grimy, gorgeous, eye-catching, and utterly, utterly, utterly real. You're looking at a real Los Angeles, not a film set. Something else I found that set the bar and I found eye-catching with an attention to detail that's really quite remarkable was the small sets. Literally the street level shops and the people that inhabited them. And all of that was complemented by those people, by the various minor characters in there, the noodle sellers, the eyeball designers, the sudden wandering Hare Krishna worshippers doing their thing. Hare, 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 Hare. And all of that, gotta help me, all of that backed up by Vangelis's absolutely gorgeous soundtrack. About my only issue with the film is now having seen the alternative cuts that lack the happy ending, I'm not too sure if it fits. It does seem to jar somewhat, jumping from what I now know is the real ending to the happy ended that Ridley Scott had forced on him. I think I would have rather have kept the narration, but maybe lost the happy ending. I'm still undecided, but it does seem to jar. Now, about those versions, you'll have noticed I gave you a rough list of the different versions that I knew about. There's possibly more. Wikipedia has a habit of contradicting itself there. But anyway, you'll have noticed I gave you a rough list of the versions I could positively identify. But I should also note that there's a lot of different Blu-ray offers, both on Amazon and other sites, and digital offers of the various different versions. Some of the ones I noticed on Amazon are similar box sets to the one I bought and eventually had to send back. They've got the 5 or so different cuts and various documentaries. Now, Apple's TV store offers both a theatrical and the final cut, but not as a package deal. They offer them $7.99 per individual film. Virgin's Media Store only seems to offer the final cut version, and as far as I can tell, the same applies to other services. They only seem to have, at minimum, the final cut version. I couldn't see if they had the various theatrical or workbit versions. Now, the reason I say this is that The other film I thought to check out on Amazon as a physical piece of media was Close Encounters of the Third Kind, because I know it's got a number of alternative cuts. And again, that was available either as a box set with the multiple cuts or in individual multiple cuts on Amazon Prime and other streaming services. That has kind of led me to a conclusion. All that has led me to a conclusion, albeit one I think that's a small conclusion, a relatively minor conclusion. We have all seen how streaming services are getting more and more and more and more popular, to the point where, as far as I know, I am the only person in my block of flats who doesn't have access to any streaming services or any of the paid for subscription streaming services. I can't afford more than a basic internet service and the free catch up services or YouTube. And the same is true for many of my friends in the area. They may be able at most to afford a basic internet connection and the free catch up services and things like YouTube and Vimeo, or they may have a dumb Blu-ray player or a smart Blu-ray player that again can only access the free stuff with. So for us, while these two products, these new versions of Blade Runner and Close Encounters are expensive, they or their cheaper cousins, the cheaper options, may be possibly the only way that we can enjoy them, or whether we bought them a gift or bought them secondhand, or indeed pay a one-off purchase payment for the digital version, we may only be able to afford physical versions of these films. There's also going to be demand for them, I think, for those of us who've bought a streamed copy, only to see it vanish from our collection when the streamer's license expires. If we've bought a physical copy, we still own it. Now, even though there's a shift from streaming or to streaming from disc, and even though at least one company I know of has stopped making recordable Blu-rays,
It's 17 hours.
thank you, Killer, I believe there is a need for films to be available on physical media. So with all of that lot said, what did I make of this theatrical cut of Blade Runner? Yes, blow years after I first saw the damn thing, yes, I may have issues with the happy ending, but other than that, I think I've seen what has to be one of science fiction's finest movies and been reminded why The Blessed Thing is such a good film. It's got one of the most gloriously conceived settings, has an ensemble cast of background players who are utterly gorgeous. I think Joe Turkel's Dr. Tyrell was a direct influence on at least one William Gibson character. It's got Harrison Ford in possibly one of his standout performances, and whose narration I feel adds more atmosphere than a carton full of gawa. And in Rutger Hauer's performance as Roy Batty, we have quite possibly the most sympathetic villain ever to grace the screen, a performance that reminds us that the best villains, the best Frankenstein's monsters, are heroes of their own stories. And that is Batty all over. He is the hero in his own story in a search for something he can never, ever have. And the simple fact he's up against his equal, who, in the shape of Harrison Ford, only adds to the bitterness of his search and his death. It's a performance. It's a performance that helps make Blade Runner one of the films of the 20th century. And whatever version we get to see, it's a film we have to see. Right, thank you for which one. Twerping. I'm sorry, I'll do that again. Part 7, last words. that is where I am going to leave things for now, at least. I'll be trying to catch another film at some point. There's a few I'd like to see and tell you about, but I won't tell you when that will be because I don't know yet when it will be. I will also be reviewing some TV as and when Doctor Who or Star Trek or something restarts, and as and when I get a few more optical discs in that I want to share with you. I will be doing the daily teaser, obviously. If you've been following me for the past 15 odd years, you realise that's going to be hard to stop, but you are welcome to take part. Answers on the blog, please, for preference. At any rate, until then, feel free to bookmark Knickknacks Old Peculiar and pay me a visit over there. Feel free to subscribe to this YouTube channel, and feel free, if you can, and if you've enjoyed my work, to both subscribe, like, share, and more importantly, tip if you think that's the appropriate thing to do. Thank you for watching. Have a very good day. Come back soon, and remember, be seeing you.